The AI just helps us to be faster and to experiment more, but we still follow the classic rules of we first discover and see what problems there actually are in customer care.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Cards Against Complexity. Today with Ludwig Pannach from XXL Digital. I think I forgot an X. It's actually XXXL Digital.
Yeah, I'm always stumbling upon that. Thanks, first of all, Jan, for inviting me. And you're right. Yeah, it's I'm in the company since 9 months, but still stumbling upon this a lot of X's.
I think it's very clear. I mean, every time you for everyone who doesn't know the Lutz Group, it's one of the largest furniture retailers globally. You can maybe give us a quick intro in a minute, but it's always when I drive on the motorway and you see that like X, you're almost like you're gone by the time you've seen the third X. But the message is very clear. It's a big box retail for furniture, and not only one brand, but multi-brand, digital and offline. But maybe you can tell us a bit more about XXXL Digital and the group, and maybe yourself as well.
As you see, it's a good name to remember because it's hard to pronounce, but you get used to it. I'm usually saying Lutz now. But yeah, to a few words about the company. So I'm in the AI team of XXXL Digital, which is part of the Lutz Group. And the XXXLutz Group is combined of different companies, different sub-brands. The group itself includes XXXLutz, Mömax, Möbelix, and some more, but these are the famous brands, mostly in Europe, Germany and Australia main markets. But there's also the Giga Group, which combines all the different subsidiaries of the Lutz Group, because we are family-owned and have a lot of different sub-brands, which also includes Porta, newly bought Porta, but also Porta, Home24, and many more. So we have a conglomerate of different sub-brands, which makes also the core of the company itself. And the digital unit is responsible for, on the one hand side, all the digital initiatives within the company, but also the e-commerce business itself.
Very exciting, and I mean that's a proper enterprise environment, and that's what we talk about in the season: enterprise service, enterprise AI as well. You're leading the AI efforts for the group, for the Lutz Group. So very much excited to dive into this. Before we go there, we always love to play this Cards Against Complexity game. I mean, that's what in the end the title is of the podcast. Yes, so I'll share a set that's actually made for you. In a second, you'll tell me if you can see it, and then I had a sneak peek. I think we'll find a card here that fits for you. So for everyone who doesn't know the game, Cards Against Complexity, same idea as Cards Against Humanity. We've got one card on the left-hand side. It's a sentence that needs completion, and Ludwig will choose one of the three cards in a second on the right. They might not all be the perfect fit, but one of them has to complete the sentence. I always love this play on complexity, right? Like, I mean, in the day-to-day enterprise life, complexity is a reality. Here, at least, we've got a simple way to solve it. It's not always that easy, but we'll get to that in a second. So, XXXLutz launches a new tool to design a living room layout. In this day and age, we obviously use AI, and we do that to match your layout with any picture that you choose, run a personality test and suggest the items that best fit your hobbies, or optimize your layout so that you can clean as fast as possible.
Very nice. So generally, that's like one of the areas we, of course, totally investigating in, right? Because it's extending the customer journey. So currently, usually if you buy furniture, or like the first touch point is at the store itself or online, but like the whole experimentation and the whole finding out what furniture you actually need comes before. And we have strong indications generally that it's just matching your style and your layout. So I would definitely choose the first one to kind of match what you actually want and what's possible, right? But because the others are like fun ways to kind of, or like maybe even further ways to match it if we have more information about like buying behavior and all that stuff, that would be interesting. But the starting point is to actually take a picture of your room and get suggestions of what would fit in, or even what we actually also have live already. It's like, imagine you're in some hotel or wherever where you just like the room and style, and you take a picture of the chair, that table, whatever, and you get suggested what we have available in our stores. And maybe it's not matching 100%, but quite, if you have a close object, a close chair or whatever, then you get proposed that to buy it.
Perfect. So we get a layout based on the picture. I mean, that's in reach with what you've got already in your product, and obviously with the broad product assortment, there must be some kind of match, I'm sure. There's always a fun part of not having to clean the room just because the layout is perfect. So maybe we can, and maybe soon we can also build sell a robot that can go between the furniture that just fits in. But that's for a different world. I would love to take this podcast from fantasy world to reality, actually, because I think today a lot of people are talking about what's potentially possible with AI.
Yes.
But you're and you've been in the last few years at the forefront of actually applying AI. And that's not only been at your current position, but maybe we go one step back. You were for quite a few years in the automotive industry. Maybe take us back to that future, I would say, because the automotive industry, in many ways, was ahead of the AI curve and already applied AI in very different fields much earlier than everybody could actually say ChatGPT and talk to their neighbor about it. So maybe you take us a bit through that journey, how you came into the AI world, and then we'll touch on XXL in a bit.
Yeah, perfect link to also what I've done. So I worked for Porsche over the last 7 years before joining like this different world of furniture retail. And within Porsche, I was moving through different phases, starting in consulting. So basically helping different customers in the mobility area to develop digital products. And then it got more and more into, like, especially digital products or in any software product, to be more data-based, right? Utilizing big data, finding data strategies to ensure that the data you're having also delivers value. Because in automotive, it was a fun path, because at the beginning when I joined, like Tesla was new in the game and so on and so forth. And we basically had a large issue that we had 10 million cars to the VW group, 10 million cars on the street, but like basically no connection of these cars, and we couldn't get the data out, or it was hard to get the data out. At this time also, car sharing and so on came into place. So the whole thing about not owning a car, but mobility is the central point of business for the company itself. So this whole changed, and this also changed the approach of how to deliver value to the customer through software. And this approach is then just basically the cherry on top was AI in that sense. So my last stage at Porsche was to build up the software business of Porsche itself, the external software business. So finding use cases within the company, within the production area, and then see if they have potential to be scaled on the market and to be sold to other industrial players. And this was a hard game, because we had hundreds of use cases, or still exists, of course, the department, hundreds of use cases that everyone thought of could be, when we do that with AI, we could reach millions and millions. But if you then use like classical product management, seeing if that is actually a problem, testing quickly if AI can do anything in improving that problem, and then scaling. This game I'm basically also playing in. So this Cards Against a Complexity game, so to say, is what I'm also playing at Lutz too, because it's easy, or it's not easy for success, but it's easy to just fall into this trap of just collecting ideas and just then delivering these ideas. And AI just helps us to be faster and to experiment more, but we still follow the classic rules of we first discover and see what problems there actually are in customer care, not with AI in customer care, right? With customer care. Why do people call us? How could we address this issue and get like less calls in, having better customer experience, and so on and so forth. And then we see where's the, like, for example, data readiness and company readiness, and as well also the technology, a good fit to solve these problems. And if it's not like the top priority problems, if we can't solve that with AI, we step to the next department. Because if we solve the 20th problem we wouldn't solve anything. It would be possible. So everyday business for us is, could we do this and that with AI? The typical answer is always yes, but where's the problem?
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah, where's the problem? Could we optimize all text on all our website? Yes, but is this actually a problem?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the proof of this problem, right? And then if we say, yeah, we noticed, for example, it can be conversion boost if the texts are better written, then we say, okay, can we test it? We don't need a half a year software buy-in to test it. Let's do 50 texts with an A/B test, split test with generated text versus normal text, and then see, is it actually improving conversion by 10% or whatever, and then only investing. So the game is the same, but it's of course hard to convince everyone to do that like this. But AI just like gives us so much acceleration in whatever we do. It's perfect. So my touch point was years and years ago, but basically starting with classical data topics, accelerating data, using data. But I was always like at the forefront of trying to make use of this data and make kind of business out of it, or at least creating value out of data. And now just AI kind of accelerated that quickly.
And
Gen AI.
Exactly, Gen AI. I think that's maybe the point. Like there's Gen AI, but there's been so much AI around. I mean, you've probably touched other types of models, other types of technologies. That's all grouped under AI. But I imagine in the automotive space, we don't get self-driving cars just from Gen AI. So maybe take us a bit through the technology evolution that you've seen here, and the technology that you've seen applied versus Gen AI, because everybody talks about the chat interfaces and so on, but there's much more, I think, if we look a bit further.
Yes. So there's, especially in this industry that is like based a lot on data and software. So it's a software-driven vehicle, software-driven company. Itself, automotive was always on the forefront, is always on the forefront of innovation. So making use of data was strategy number one. But as you can imagine, or like before Gen AI, there was still a lot of data and still like data used since decades to, for example, doing quality management, right? So every car at the end of line is sorted out or like scanned if there's any failures and so on. And already like with cameras that already have base systems to decide, decision systems to decide, is there a mistake, is there a fault, and can we produce it? And then AI came, or like over the last decade, like machine learning and computer vision and so on, like options to be more adaptable, to be faster, and to not, having to go back to the software company to change parameters, but to make it based on a self-learning system came into place. But the expectations were then coming from this high automated, high assured systems with 99.9% accuracy, and then say, okay, now we just do it with AI and it's easy. And this was a lot of change. And I imagine, I haven't seen the Gen AI change in Porsche that much, but I imagine it's now the same, right? So kind of expecting, we have a company that is running on processes and works like a clockwork. And then we just use Gen AI to kind of ease things. And so Gen AI is just easing the interface with that, but computer vision and all the classical machine learning and data science is hardly built in. Into all the production lines and so on and so forth already, because it's data-driven decisions even before AI, like even before self-learning systems and self-deciding systems.
And now you're, in a very different world, right? So the production line has always been, an automotive company is an engineering company by default. Yes. It's not a software company, it's an engineering company. There's certain principles, data is everywhere. Now you're in e-commerce and in retail. I've seen my fair share of it, but that's slightly different than an automotive company. Maybe take me through that, because it must be an exciting journey, but probably also you're running into challenges now applying AI and technology to a retail group, especially at that enterprise scale.
Yes. So I would say it's especially the retail industry and e-commerce is the perfect incubator and accelerator of AI. So in comparison to automotive, you had to first, it's like rather B2B, right? So every AI software you implement is rather like, if it's going to production lines or to logistics, it's rather a B2B case. You don't have that much, like the touch points of customers are very limited when you buy and after sales usually. And of course, you can use Gen AI, but you don't have that much interactions and with the customer, and the product is quite complex. So the whole configuration and so on is like, it's very much on single touch points, or on like less touch points, I would say. In e-commerce, it's like, first, the very interesting part is that the customer itself changes, right? So how we just had it at the beginning, how he or she is kind of deciding on products. And we haven't touched into that much, because usually, your journey begins as soon as you enter as soon as you see a campaign, of course, but then as soon as you enter the shop. And now we could like influence that, or we try to influence that in the future to kind of help in the decision process, right? I myself was in a furniture shop just last week, saw a carpet and wasn't sure, does it fit into my room? And I just did a picture of my room, did a picture of the carpet and said, ChatGPT, please combine those. And it just laid that 90% accuracy, but laid that out. And this is like changing your whole customer journey. Also like across all line, how you decide, how you buy, how you find an article, and so on and so forth. And in the same time, and this is probably the same also for all the companies, like every aspect of the company internally is changing, right? How HR is organizing itself, how marketing can create content, and so on and so forth. And the interesting part is that in furniture, we small things like cups, and we sell big things like sofas, and you have different living situations and different setups where this kind of is interesting for the customer itself. So you have a variety, but also a lot of configuration. So you have everything in one pot. That's why it's way broader than automotive. It has the configuration part and so on, but it has also a lot of small articles, and it has always also a service component. So it's like the perfect experimentation world, but that's why it's also hard to focus. So focus and prioritization is our main part, because we could do so many things, but we somehow have to kind of start and find the quick wins, find the highest leverage, and at the same time enable the company.
Yeah,
and
that's a journey. I mean, it's a product journey, but that's also a change journey. I assume. So you've now been there for a few months, right? And it's your road into the journey that probably a lot of people go through right now. Like other people get a role to lead now the AI efforts in an organization. What have you seen as your like steps in the first year that made like that created traction and the created first successes? Like what was important in the beginning to get everyone on board and move them in the direction where you were going?
Yes. So I noticed that we are, as a team, doing two things, and usually companies rather focus on one of these two things. We do them in parallel. And the one is the transformation itself, right? And that's what every company can do very easily. I was just recently at the panel, and like a small, medium-sized company, rather small, I would say, compared to Lutz, asked us, how do you approach this? Do you need an AI team? Do you need experts? Do you need this and that? I said, therefore, the transformation itself, you find a lot of, just spot the students, the young people, or there's a lot of universities in your area probably that are kind of experimenting and discovering how AI is used in companies and so on and so forth. So you can use existing methods, existing people to kind of ease the transformation. What does it mean? Like help people to find the right learning opportunities. Find a company GPT style safe environment that everyone can experiment in. It's not that easy, but there's now a lot of offerings on the market that you can just buy in, credit card, and you don't need a lot of expertise in that. And then there's the other part, and this is like, we call it like task force, AI task force, where we not top down, but focused on actually the problems within the different areas, spot them, discover them, to find the highest levers, and actually then prove that AI could deliver value, and then focus on that. And that's where you actually need experts, and where you also need product experts, data science experts, and so on and so forth. And that's the hardest part. So, and this is where we haven't found, where we also have to transform like the mindset of building software itself, not just having this IT-based approach of collecting whatever stakeholders want and then just deliver that, because in AI there's like 10 times, 20 times, 30 times possibilities. Every department I talk to has a lot of ideas what they could do with AI, and you kind of need to build velocity in giving them a chance to test out by themselves. Otherwise, you're just a bottleneck. So this is kind of this approach of guiding everyone how to do it. Maybe build a company GPT or buy a company GPT that everyone can build use cases, but then also focus as a company on the highest levels. Because otherwise, innovation, it's also how innovation works. Not just deciding on what use cases you want to do, but also fostering certain use cases that have highest value for the company, so that you have guardrails also for the upcoming future with AI. Otherwise, you're just experimenting, and that's what we moved in the last year, going from experimentation to actually building business value, not really with AI or under the flag of AI, but saying, okay, we have this strategy, we want to be there as a company. How can AI leverage that, and then focus on the leverages?
Very exciting. I mean, I could go much further here. I think we could fill another hour. I see already we're getting to that final question, which actually I would love to love to think a bit about your journey. Like, if I was starting out on this journey, right? I mean, I started at some point in consulting. You did a few years in consulting. If we now meet a new student grad, I mean, you may be speaking at the university to grads, right? What would be your advice in this day and age to get started into a career similar to this? Because I guess for you, it was somehow a natural transition, but now things happen so fast, not in 8 years, they happen in 8 months. What do I do as a student to get started into this world?
I hear that quite often. This everything is changing so fast. We can't do strategy, for example. I think that's not true, because the same sense was true for not maybe in that speed, but we always had this fast change, and with that mindset, we would never kind of adapt to the current situation. Always said, oh, there's the internet now. What do we do? Yeah. I was like also lecturing in the university, and we had this with all the professors. What happens if our students all use Gen AI? And we probably had the same question when you had Wikipedia and no books anymore. What is now happening? You just have to adapt your style, right? And you have to adapt. You have to find methods, and you still have to be data literate. I'm still using the methods that I'm using since 10 years to find and leverage products. So I think university offers two things. One, the methods, and the university have to adapt in order to kind of not hinder AI, but guide us through how do we use AI. What I used in a lecture, for example, is not doing any tests anymore, because it's so easy to cheat on tests, but allow to prepare presentations with AI. But then every exam was then discussing about that, right? Asking questions about it, because that's you don't have ChatGPT in front of you when you're then presenting, and all the questions you can't really prepare, so to say. So you then have to understand the topic, and there you notice, okay, someone just prepared a presentation with ChatGPT. It's nice, the topic, but he doesn't know or she doesn't know anything about it. So you just have to adapt, but still the method holds true. And university offers these two things, like kind of guide you through life by offering you methods that hold true for like how to do research, how to, dive into topics, how to understand topics, how to question topics. That is still true, even if on a weekly basis new technology comes out. And the other thing is building up the network that just helps you to get into jobs and nice discussions in the future. And the first thing, universities have to adapt. So if they teach, if you study informatics or technology, it shouldn't be about the current technology. And rather kind of adapt principles and show you how to accelerate on that. But university was never really about that. So as I mentioned, like in IT, otherwise we always would have this issue of after you finish your studies, like the programming language you learned is already overhauled. So and this was always like a kind of challenge. Now it's just accelerated. That's why universities, I think, adapt to that. And that's what you should focus on when studying again, or when you choosing the university, that you don't fall into this trap, so to say.
No. Thank you so much, Ludwig. What
you.
an insightful conversation. I think we touched a lot of and covered a lot of ground, all the way from your beginnings at Porsche, building products for around AI, building building data products around production lines, automotive, then all the way to retail and changing an organization, which you're in the middle of that change journey, and then crossing some cards against complexity in between, where we now know how to maybe get to a clean room or a room that's designed in line with your picture. Thank you so much for your time. Very, very insightful. Would have loved to spend another hour. Maybe we do another episode a few episodes down the line. All the best for your journey. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jan. It was nice. Thank you.